Hello guys and welcome back, and in this video series we are going to learn about Microsoft Azure AZ900, which is basically a fundamental certification, Microsoft Azure fundamental certification, with which you can actually start your cloud computing journey. Okay, now in this series, in this whole playlist, if I may, we are going to learn all the basics, what are required to actually get the certification of Microsoft Azure 900. So in case if you have some questions, some doubts, in that case I would say comment box is the right place for you to ask the questions. I just want to mention one thing: I have cleared this examination, so I understand like how this examination works, and if you're preparing for the first time, how you can prepare for it. Now the big question is, if you are watching this particular video, who should actually follow along? Well, if you're thinking of changing your career in cloud computing, if you're thinking of changing your career to cloud, actually, in that case this particular web series, I should not say web series, this particular series is for you. If your job description says that you need Microsoft Azure fundamental certification, in that case you should watch this series. If you are a student and you're planning to jump the cloud wave, in that case this particular series is going to be for you. And if you want to do freelancing with cloud as an expertise, specifically if I talk about Microsoft Azure as an expertise, in that case also you can start with this particular series, because this is going to cover all the fundamentals of Microsoft Azure. Now one thing I want to mention, in case if you're a student, you are at the right place at the right time, because cloud is again the next technology which is booming up, and this is a very good time for you to actually jump the cloud wave. Now the most important point of the series is what we are going to do. So we are going to cover the basics of cloud computing and Microsoft Azure. Now since we are actually talking about Microsoft Azure 900, AZ900, so it is going to cover the basics of cloud as well as basics of Microsoft Azure. Now I do not require you to have some prior cloud computing experience. If you are a fresher, you just heard cloud computing from your friend, or maybe on newspaper, or maybe somewhere else, in that case you can follow along the series. If you do not have any programming experience, then also you can follow along this series. But if you have some experience with cloud computing, this is, as I said, it's a very basic course about cloud computing and Microsoft Azure. In that case you should not follow this series, because we are going to cover only the basic parts. We are not going to touch even the intermediate part of Microsoft Azure. Okay, now before we jump into this particular series, and let's start with what is actually asked by Microsoft Azure AZ900 examination, I just want to highlight few things about this industry. This industry offers you a higher pay, but also requires updated skill set. So it is not something that you have learned something like you have learned how to number 1 to 100 and that's it. You have to learn more, and since this industry is changing almost every 6 months, so you need to have some updated skill set, otherwise you're going to become irrelevant. Second thing is, it offers work from home experience, but 9 to 5 can often turn into 9 to 11 p.m. That is what I wanted to mention. 9 a.m. can turn into 11 p.m. and again that is part of this industry, because since you can work from anywhere, so like it does not require any logistics or maybe some other issues. Third thing is, constant learning is must. As I mentioned, in my experience, this industry changes within 6 months. I'm not going to say changes, but yes, it gets updated. New things are already there. So constant learning is must, and you should have the constant learning. If that is not something you can do, this is not the right series you should follow. Okay, and industry expects you to provide secure solution which are under the budget. Now this is something which I wanted to mention right now, because this may become very important for you down 1 year or 1.5 years down the line. They're going to expect you to provide a secure solution which is under the budget, because again that is what human beings want. They want the most secure room for the most affordable price they can have. So that is what the industry is expecting out of you. Okay, now let's start focusing on what are the skills which are measured in this particular examination. So the first thing Microsoft Azure, actually this examination asks you, is cloud concepts. So they ask you to give they ask you to identify the benefits and consideration of using cloud services. So that is first thing. Like again, this comes under describe the cloud concepts. difference between categories of cloud computing services, and describe the difference between types of cloud computing. So these are very basic things. As you can see, these are very basic things. Again, if you have heard about these things for the very first time, don't worry, we are going to discuss on that. And in the second part says describe core Azure services. So how the core Azure architectural component works. I would not say works, but yes, you have to describe that. The core resource available in Microsoft Azure. So like you have to describe that as well. In the third component, or I should say the part, describe core solution and management tools on Azure. So like core solutions available in Microsoft Azure and Azure management tools. Now bear in mind, I just want to mention one thing. This is all theoretical, this is all conceptual. Everything which we are discussing here, nothing is practical as per now, because this examination, as per my experience, this is all about fundamentals. It is all about the knowledge and the concepts, understanding of cloud computing and Microsoft Azure, not how Microsoft Azure works. And I should not say how Microsoft Azure works, but yes, how you can get things done in Microsoft Azure, because that is something very different. In the next part, if I may, describe general security and network security features which are there in Microsoft Azure. Then identity, governance, privacy and compliance feature. So like Azure Core Identity Service, which is often known as IAM, which also stands for Identity Access Management. Then Azure governance policy, so like how Microsoft Azure can actually help the government build the solution on top of their platform. And finally, the privacy and the compliances resources. So usually I'll give you an example. Usually in India, if I talk about, RBI has some compliances, especially for fintech. Okay, they have for all the companies which are falling into the fintech industry, if I may. So they have some sort of a requirement in terms of compliances. So what kind of compliances Microsoft Azure is following and what are the importance of it? Okay, this is what we are going to discuss in this particular part. And finally, as I mentioned, the cost management and service level agreement. So describe the method for planning and managing cost in Microsoft Azure and Azure service level agreement and service life cycles. So let's say if I'm using a particular service, so what is their service level agreement? Some services have 99.9% of uptime, okay, and service life cycle, like let's say it is 2 years, maybe 6 months, or whatever that is. So these all things we are going to discuss in details. So I would expect you to actually sit tight, watch this whole series. If you have some questions, if you have some doubts, comment box is the right place for you guys to ask the questions. This is going to be a free of cost series, so you don't have to pay anything about it, for this. But yes, if you are getting successfully, like if you have cleared the certification examination, if you have watched this series, of course this is not the only series you're going to watch. So in that case, I would say again, please give me appreciation on the comment and let me know if the course helped you or not. So with this, I'll see you on the other side in the very first video. Thank you.